Good day, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Northwest Access TV. I'm Richard Cowperthwait as we get ever closer to Town Meeting Day. Another show today with candidates for the St. Albans Town Selectboard. And I should note we're taping this show on Wednesday, February 22nd. Two contested races in St. Albans Town. And we have a 3-year term at stake with Jonathan Giroux, the board chair, running for re-election against David McWilliams for a 2-year term. Incumbent Brendan Deso being challenged by David Bray. All 4 candidates are here, which I appreciate. And let's start with some background for the candidates. I'll start to my right to Mr. David McWilliams. David, no stranger to the town, a former selectman and taking another shot at selectman, but tell us about yourself. Give us a little background.
Well, first of all, I served 2 terms on the select board and I really enjoyed it. I lived in St. Albans Town for probably 35 years, and I've enjoyed working with the public. I also was president of public access here for 9 years, and ran this place with my executive director. I have worked at different locations in St. Albans Town and city, and the reason I'm running is because of the fact that I think that we're at a point where the town of St. Albans is overspending, and I want to try to get that under control. So if you ask me the question, do I support the budget? I'm saying no.
Is that right? You do not support the budget? And we'll get into specific issues later. We have the board chair, Jonathan Giroux. Jonathan, easy decision to run for re-election or not easy?
Yeah, it was fairly easy. Yeah, for sure.
Fairly easy.
Yeah, I think the way the direction of the town heading is great. The recent city and water sewer deal was really good for the area. It's really good for future development. I think in order to keep the town moving forward, we are going to have to spend some money. You can ask multiple people throughout towns and other towns that right now is a tough time for budgets. Like, it's not easy for anyone. We went through that thing and we actually beat it up and beat up some departments. Unless you want to cut out entire departments, the budget's pretty tight.
And give us a little background on yourself.
I lived here for almost 20 years. Yeah, 20 years actually, it'll be this year. I was born and raised in Swanton, but lived here ever since.
It sounds like pretty busy with your job.
Yeah, I have Rail City Plumbing and Heating. That's me. Started that up 3 years ago now. It's been pretty successful. That keeps me busy, and then being on the select board keeps me busy also.
Brendan Deso, again, candidate for re-election. I guess, Brendan, for a while you were thinking you would not be a candidate for re-election, but change your mind.
Yeah, my decision was a little bit more difficult than Jonathan's. I've been on the board since March of 2017. We've gotten a lot of really good work done. My wife and I just welcomed our son Elliot 17 months ago. He's almost a year and a half already. So I'm also a small business owner. I own a manufactured housing dealership, a growing self-storage facility. I'm a real estate broker, and I do some real estate consulting as well. So I thought I could spend more time at home and at work, but there are so many initiatives in the town that are at critical points right now that need to be seen through to the finish line. I really think that continuity at the select board level is extremely important right now because we're about to hire a new town manager, and that person will need as much support and background context as possible as they go about doing some really important work for the town. So I'm here as a candidate for 2 more years. I don't expect to run after this term. And my son will be 3.5. It'll be time to start traveling. My wife and I could have a second kid, so I think this will be it for me. But there are critical aspects of the town and city's agreement for policing water and sewer services, like the creation of the Joint Police Board and the Joint Police Advisory Council, and then once the Joint Police Board's formed and staffed, we need to go through the first budget development process for the St. Albans Police Department under the terms of our new deal. So, helping the town manager make sure that process goes smoothly and that there are no hiccups that could affect the deal in its entirety. It's really important for the community, and So that's the biggest reason I'm running. There are a lot more, and I'm sure we'll get into
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get into that. David Bray, tell us, give us some background on yourself and why'd you jump into this race?
Well, I grew up in St. Albans. My parents had a grocery store on South Main Street across from BFA. I moved to the town about 34 years ago and had been living down on Lower Newton Road since then. Much of my career brought me to work over in New York State. Had a lot of involvement over there with economic development, bringing Canadian companies into the Plattsburgh area, rehabbing old facilities and putting them back to work, and did a lot of work with education, trades training, education in the high schools. And I'm hoping that some of the skills that I learned over there, I could bring back over here to the folks in St. Albans. I retired 6 years ago. I have a child that's, well, not a child anymore, but she's 41 years old, but she's in a wheelchair, and, you know, she has occasional medical problems, so I can't travel south in the wintertime with my snowbird friends. So instead of looking at the bird feeder all winter long, I told my wife that it's time to give something back to the town that's been giving to me for 74 years. So have time on my hand, I'm interested, motivated, and I just like to try to have the town plan forward.
Have you run for anything in the town before?
The only thing I've ever run for was student government president when I was at Vermont Technical College.
Did you win that?
I won that one, yes.
So you got a good track record so far.
So far.
David McWilliams already said he does not support the town budget of almost $6.2 million. I guess I'll assume that Jonathan and Brendan are supportive of the town budget. What about yourself?
I don't support it. I think it's going to be the first time in my life I've ever voted against the town budget.
And why so?
Well, it's up $1 million. It works out to maybe $400 per home increased tax if you've got a house that's worth $400,000, and there's an awful lot of people in town that are on fixed incomes that can't afford these bumps. And I'm just curious. I've tried to do a deep dive into the budget to figure out what's in there, and I just have a lot of questions about it to find out if there's money that can be found out there to be brought in from other places. I've done a lot of budgets, and I know they're difficult, and a lot of times you're shooting the dart at a board, trying to figure out where you've got to go, but I believe in looking a long ways down the road, not just 1 year, but I would look down 3, 4, 5, 10 years to try to figure out what does the town have to be today in order to be ready for 10 years from now.
Realizing you're not on the board at this point, but so I'm not sure how intimately you know the budget, but are there areas in the budget where you think you could have spent less money putting that together? I realize that may be hard for you to say.
Well, I think that some of it, it was mandatory. The city police agreement, we had to come up with $200,000 for that. There was the setting aside revenue for future town equipment. That seemed to be a necessity. There was another $50,000 in there, I believe, for the increase that we had to pay the sheriff's department. But that leaves $550,000 out there that I'm not sure what and why that's all needed. So I would take a look at that again.
Okay. And again, try to be we have a lot of time, but try to be relatively concise. Brendan, you obviously support the budget, and I know you've.
I do. I've done the politically inadvisable thing of making the tax increase a focal point of my campaign because folks deserve to hear about it. It's unfortunate, it's unavoidable. Like Mr. Bray said, it's about $977,000 that we're projecting.
As an increase.
So that doesn't include any additional revenues that could offset that increase, but that's the amount of expense increase that we're looking at. We'll take revenues off of it, and that'll determine how much taxes go up. That $360 to $400 on a single-family home, assessed at $400,000 was a calculation I did at a select board meeting, and I've been using it in my campaign outreach, so folks understand that this is it's a once every probably 5 to 10 years tax hit. About 100,000 of it is related to salary increases. Part of that was adding a FTE within the Department of Community Development. It's an administrative assistant position that will actually be shared between Department of Public Works, Stormwater, and the Department of Community Development. That person will help handle administrative tasks so our directors have time to focus on projects, and they'll help oversee grant applications. we're at a time where there's unprecedented amounts of state and federal dollars available for water quality and other infrastructure. So we're trying to bring as much of that home to St. Albans as possible. So we've got roughly over 200,000 between health insurance and salary increases that were totally unavoidable, with the exception of this addition of this one FTE, but I think it'll pay dividends in the long run. We'll bring more money in and get more done because of it. 200,000 of it was related, like Mr. Bray said, to the town's portion of upgrading the St. Albans Police Department, buying new cruisers, paying for folks to go to the police academy, sign-on bonuses, and other expenses related to equipment. $200,000 was funding the Department of Public Works Equipment Reserve Fund. We were underfunding for years, and we were getting to the point where our next few pieces of equipment, we were either going to have to ask for, to raise taxes incrementally year to year to buy certain pieces of equipment, and the tax rate wouldn't have been level, or we could do a 10-year capital plan that gave us an annual amount that we could fund to keep our tax rate the same. That's what we did. We worked really hard on that. Voters passed it, I think, by 1,000 to 500 roughly. So it was a 2-to-1 worth of support. But that $200,000 worth of funding goes into effect this year. And then, lastly, another big cost center. We have a surplus every year out of the general fund. We call it our fund balance, and we use that in future fiscal years to apply to lower our tax rate. Last year we had about $200,000. Due to inflation and the overall tightening of the town's budget, we only have $100,000 available this year. So that $100,000 gap, it's not in the general fund budget. You won't find it there if you're trying to do that math. But that's something we see coming, and we're making it known now.
Okay. Jonathan, some words about the budget. Obviously, you support the budget. Again, it's up significantly. You think that's justified, I assume?
I do. The original budget from the start, from day one, was even worse, and we really took it down. And years ago, I was always the guy that said, we got to keep the budget tight. We got to, nail it right down. But I think on the growth over the past few years have been, we've been spending money, but we've been getting a lot out of it. I mean, the stormwater department, utilities up and running, which is big. It's an unfunded mandate from the state. So we figured out how to fund it. And there's been talk that there's going to be some legislature that might, some of the people that pay the stormwater now will be they don't have to pay it anymore. So then we're going to have to look to, how are we going to structure to fund that department again. I don't think you'll see it in your taxes, or it won't really affect the budget too much, but it's just, it seems like when we get something good going up and running, like the stormwater department or the LOT, the infrastructure fund, it seems like somebody's always trying to take it a little bit, or they want a little more of it, because there's talk about that the LOT might go away from the town. So,
Again, the LOT, the local option tax, which of course is funding, I guess it funded the new public works
Yeah.
garage as well as the new town hall.
And the town hall, yep, for sure.
David, again, realizing you're not on the board now, but again, you're saying you would have voted against that budget. As an outsider at this point, any areas where you
Well,
think
if you
the
look at
town
the-
could have spent less?
If you look at the increase in the budget and what has gone up, the town clerk's office is up 12,000, assessors is up about 15,000, planning and zoning is up 83,000, director of operations 21,000, town manager 87,000, fire department 14,000, park and recreation 73,000, ambulance 6,600, law, which is what they have to have money for, is 247,743, and Department of Public Works 73,648. The town has been going down the right road, but I also feel that during these times, everything's tight. People are paying high sewer bills, high water bills, they're paying high fuel, electricity, and I think that, the town should have cut the budget and kept it under control and not raised it the 9% that they did during this budget, and that's why I don't support it.
Okay, I'll start with you this time. Big news. It's been described as a historic agreement between the city and town. I don't think the word historic is misused here. I think that's Right, I hate to think how much money the city and town has spent in litigation over water, wastewater issues for decades. Maybe it's over $1 million. But anyway, if you're on the board, I believe the town select board and city council approved that agreement unanimously, I believe. If you're on the select board, would you have supported that or not?
I think there should have been a commission set up from people outside the city and town to oversee what's going on in the town and the city in reference to the water and wastewater, because the city of St. Albans, that's their golden child, and they're not going to do anything as far as giving anything to the town. The commission would have made decisions on what's going on as far as, new water lines, new sewer lines, and how the money is spent. The police department, the law enforcement, they're all good officers, whether it's the sheriff or the city police. That budget is going to go up substantially. And the select board, which has already approved it, if I'm on the board, I have to support it. But I will try to make some corrections by putting in that commission, so that way the city and town have a fair shot.
Again, had you been on the board, can you give me a yes or no? I wasn't totally clear on your answer. Can you give me a yes or no or not to that? Had you been on the board?
In reference to the city water,
the agreement.
I think if I was on, I'd have made asked a lot more questions. I think the public taxpayers should have had a lot more time to have their input into it. So as it is right now, I don't support it.
Jonathan, what about David's point? That agreement kind of came out of the blue to a lot of people, obviously not you folks, but in retrospect, do you think there could have been some public input to that, or is that an issue that the boards have to decide? Any reaction to David's comment?
So I think throughout the years you see a lot of negativity and recessiveness. And I think us as select board members, I think sometimes that gets in the way of what's actually right and what's wrong. So this agreement's been trying to be made for years, and we got it done. That's why we're supposed to make those decisions, what's best for the town. Like, you can't go to voters for everything. You can't, who's gonna do our garbage pickup this year? Who's gonna do our fuels? Like, that stuff does, even the town manager makes those. We don't decide a lot of that stuff. Like, I notice what's hard for a lot of people is to get around how the town manager form of government works. Like, people think they can go in and just direct employees to do what they want to do when they do. That's not the job of a select board member at all. That's the town manager. But back to your original question, I'm very happy that this water and sewer agreement got together. And like I said, if you just want to bring negativeness and recessiveness, that's not the way to get things moving forward.
Brendan, again, try to be relatively concise here.
Oh, definitely.
But again, in retrospect, should the public have had some say in that or not?
So I'll go back to 2017 when I first got elected. The town was suing the city over the affiliation fee ordinance. There were two big issues: an extraterritorial illegal tax that was called an affiliation fee that cost homeowners and business owners in our community a lot of money that they shouldn't have had to pay. We were in the right to be in court over that, but it wasn't the right way to get to this negotiating table to reach this deal. We also were in court over the extraterritorial review criteria. Every time you got an allocation from the city water and sewer plant for a project in the town, you had to fill out 10 questions roughly. Why can't the project be located in the city? Does the project compete with an existing city project or business or development? That's all gone because of this agreement. This agreement means that folks will pay the affiliation fee 50% of their regular bill, 50% one more time, and then it's gone forever. That's the deal we were able to make. We pulled the town out of court. We stopped suing our neighbors. We started treating them like neighbors, trying to collaborate with them on projects like the city pool, which the town didn't pass, and that's fine, but we were in the negotiating room working on a project together, and I believe that relationship forming led us to the conditions that allowed for this deal. I've had a lot of folks reach out to me. There was a 2-week period before the deal was unanimously approved by both the council and select board down at the new town hall. The only people I heard from, overwhelmingly positive. I can't believe you guys got to this. It's such a no-brainer when you read it. And the town needs access to water, sewer, and high-quality policing in order to grow and be ready for all the new growth we're going to see from, the Highgate Airport is being totally redeveloped. It's going to have municipal water and sewer in the next 5 years. The A35, the highway straight to Montreal, is going to be done by 2026, 2027.
Hope so.
One of the largest border crossings in North America, especially on the Canadian border, the Highgate Crossing, is about to be totally redeveloped. That will bring growth to our area. Our proximity to the lake and our proximity to Montreal, Plattsburgh, and Burlington, along with all these new improvements that other governments much larger than us are working on, mean that we have to be developed to have more housing and to allow businesses to be able to locate here and grow. And that's why we're working on modernizing our bylaws to allow for more housing and to get water and sewer, municipal water and sewer, so we can have dense housing, whether that's apartment buildings or single-family condensed subdivisions. And then large commercial users like Ben and Jerry's take a lot of water and sewer, and you need to have that available or they won't even look at your area. And we were able to do that.
Let me let David Bray jump in. David, again, was billed as the historic agreement between the city and town. Is that something you would have supported or not?
I would have supported it. I grew up in St. Albans city, and now I've lived in the town, so I've seen over the history how neither one could agree. I was surprised when the agreement came out, but I was happy to hear it. I agree with David that there should be some monitoring on it for the next few years to make sure that it's all the goals that we believe we're going to achieve through that are achieved. I think that anytime we can go back and work with the city and the town to bring things together to save money and not duplicate surfaces is a really good idea. I was just surprised when it came out because it was sort of, I didn't hear a whole lot of conversation about it beforehand, but again, I agree again with Brendan that it's going to bring down a lot of potential for development. With the new roads being created from Canada into the U.S., the border crossing update, I did have a lot of experience over in Champlain, New York, and down in Plattsburgh with that kind of activity going on. I'd like to see between our Chamber of Commerce, our economic development folks here in town, that we put together kind of a tag team to chase down some of that Canadian business. Use the models that Gary Douglas taught me over in Plattsburgh on how to bring businesses down to the Plattsburgh area. I think we could bring that down into the St. Albans area. But you need to have that infrastructure in order to make it work. And with the new agreement, I think that we're getting that water sewer infrastructure that's going to be really important.
We haven't talked much about the police component of the agreement, but again, St. Albans City Police will kind of resume coverage, having Sheriff's Department has had it for several years in the town come, July 1st, 2024. You comfortable with that, or are you looking forward to seeing City PD back in the town? Any thoughts on that?
I don't have an opinion. I mean, I feel I had a break-in at my house a summer ago, and I made a quick call, and they responded immediately. I think the sheriff has done a good job, but I think the city has the capability of doing the same good job. I think both those departments are good departments. So if it's more economical for us, or it makes a better team for us to team up with the city, let's go for it.
Brendan, sounds like again, Sheriff's Department has a contract. The city lost it. Sounds like mostly over dollars. Sounds like you were
Almost
pretty
exclusively,
comfortable with City PD, but again, does that sound like a good move for the town to get City PD?
Our original
back in?
decision to move to the sheriff's office back in 2020 was a business decision, purely. We're glad to have them back in the fold. We're glad that we were able to incorporate their service contract within a transformative deal for water and sewer, which is essentially what happened.
And expenses will be 50-50, city and town
So
for the...
Mr. Bray and Mr. McWilliams mentioned that we need oversight. The agreement itself calls for the creation of a joint police board to be equally represented between the city and town, with appointees from both the select board and council. That board will look at the department's budget. They'll work with the city's administration, their finance folks, and they will pass a budget recommendation, presumably to the council for approval, and we'll pay half of it. As far as policy decisions go within the department, that document also calls for a joint police advisory committee where folks will be equally represented on that committee between the city and town, the same way as the joint police board. Half will be appointed by the council, half by the select board, and those folks will function as a police advisory council for the St. Albans Police Department. We've never had that before as part of our police contract with the city previously. We've had our own police advisory board. It got defunct after a while. It didn't meet as often. It didn't work the way it should have. We've revamped it for the sheriff's office. You know, COVID hampers everything, but I'm looking forward to implementing the Joint Police Board and the Police Advisory Council to make sure they work, to make sure that this deal can work.
Jonathan, again, sounds like you feel you fared okay with Sheriff's Department coverage in the town, but as part of this agreement, comfortable going back to City PD?
Yeah, I've had no issues. I've heard of not too many big issues that we oversee as far as the town contract.
Yeah.
I believe they're holding their end up of the bargain for sure.
Yeah, and the Police Advisory Board, good thing to have. Again, city and town will have. Any concerns about that?
Well, probably 3 years ago now, we had a police advisory board where Rear Admiral Ham was on it. Albans, that was when Chief Taylor were with the city at the time. That wasn't too bad, but then when we hired the sheriffs, we put another, they kind of redid it a little bit, and that kind of, like Brendan alluded to, it kind of fell apart. I believe they just had another police advisory board meeting, or they're going to have one pretty soon. What the details of that are, I don't know right now.
Yeah. David McWilliams, again, City PD taking command again in the town July 1, 2024. You good with that? You okay with that?
Well, I have to be okay with it because the contract's signed. And there's no way that, I could support pulling it out because the select board made that decision and we're gonna have to live with it.
Do you think on the police component of this, do you think that was a good decision by the town?
I think whether it's the police or the sheriff's department, you have to look at it. What was the budget for the town of St. Albans compared to what is going to be the budget for the city of St. Albans when we have to pay for it in the future? I think that overall, I think the sheriff's department and the police department do an outstanding job, and I would support any one of them.
I haven't seen much local reaction to this, but it's been in the news for a few weeks. Again, we're taping this show on Wednesday, February 22nd. Northwest State Correctional Facility seems to stay out of the news. Can go back decades when there were some real issues with the local prison in St. Albans Town. But new news, I guess the state's looking to have a juvenile offenders component there, at least on a temporary basis. Of course, that goes back to the early days of the prison, which started as a juvenile offenders facility and became the most hardcore prison in the state. Anyway, the state, I guess, wants to have a facility in Newbury, Vermont, running into a lot of opposition down there. But David, any concern about this proposed new component to
Well, if you
Northwest
remember
State
when that
Correctional
prison was first put there, it was supposed to be a juvenile detention center.
Sure.
Now it's the maximum.
Sure.
And, right now, they only have 50% of their workforce because people are either sick with COVID or don't want to work at a correctional center or a facility like that. If you talk to the people that live around there, they don't support it. They don't want it in our town.
Well, for the record, I can disagree at least with one family. My friends across the street, the dairy farmer folks here. Anyway, but anyway, do
There's
you think a lot
people
of?
that are not supporting that.
But they certainly haven't had any security issues anytime recently, have they?
I think maybe 10 or 15 years ago they did, but they got double wire, razor wire, on two fences down there. If anybody can get over that without having any cuts, it'll be lucky.
Jonathan, did you hear anything? How much contact? Seemed like there used to be a advisory committee between the town and the prison. Seems like I haven't heard about that in years. Did you have get any word about this new component proposed for Northwest State?
The only information we got was through the town manager. I think Dr. Harry Chen reached out to us and wanted to get our thoughts on it and stuff, and then he came to a meeting and presented, what they're gonna do down there. I'm not really opposed of it. The location is kind of close. Their proposed location at the last select board meeting they came to was kind of close to the road. I thought initially they were gonna put it up by the wood line, kind of where it's out of the way. Because they gotta meet certain distances and sound requirements from the prison where the prisoners are. As of right now, I really don't see no harm in it for the community. I don't know.
Brendan, any thoughts on that? Any concern about that?
So Dr. Harry Chen, the interim commissioner for the Department for Children and Families, reached out to the town and had an initial proposal that made it sound like a temporary facility The
Right.
state's looking at building multiple temporary facilities around the state. This facility would house around 8 children, 8 juveniles. They say by the end of 8 years from the construction of the facility, they should have a larger facility comparable to Woodside that they can centralize their operations to, and they would be able to remove these new structures. I don't buy that. I think once it's there forever, it'll be in use in some form. If it's not by DCF, it could be for mental health or some other agency. When we first heard of the proposal, it sounded like it was going to be a modular structure, securely fenced in, somewhere in the back of their 40 acres they have off of Lower Newton, almost like in the woods, out of sight, out of mind. So my initial thought was to work with the state to see what negotiating room was available for the town, because we have so many infrastructure issues, like Lake Road all the way to Black Bridge is a state road. Our intersection, by the Bay Dock in Georgia Shore and the Bay Store is impaired. We have another impaired 5-way intersection just down by the new town hall where Georgia Shore meets Church and Patton Crosby and everything else. So my thought was if we could get some downtown money, some AOT money, and beautify the bay and correct those 2 infrastructures in exchange for not fighting this temporary 8-bed facility stuck back in the woods, that it could be a good deal for the town. But when they came to the select board just a couple weeks ago, they had a different location. It was way up by the road. It wasn't fenced in as well as it should be. And I don't support that, and I made that very clear. So if they come back to us with a better proposal that is more out of sight, out of mind, temporary in nature, and they can make some assurances, then I'll be looking to get to the negotiating table to try to bring back some state dollars to improve our infrastructure, namely in the bay.
David Bray, your thoughts on, again, this kind of new wrinkle to the prison?
Well,
Have you heard about it?
I have, yes.
Yeah.
And I think that type of facility is needed. As soon as I heard about it, though, I decided to canvass the neighborhood, and with the exception of the folks that you'd mentioned.
No, I was talking about the friends Lise and John
Yep.
Yando.
Yep.
They seem to have survived okay.
They've survived
fortunately.
well. And the security of the prison, I only remember one breakout and one attempted breakout in all of the years, so I've always felt pretty secure about it. I live just down the road from
Oh,
there,
really?
so my children were concerned when it was going up and becoming a maximum security, but it's been okay. But the reaction from the neighborhood was very negative. They just don't trust the state. They say it started off as a juvenile facility, now it's a maximum facility, now they're gonna put another juvenile facility in there. What's that gonna be? One person said, all the activity that went on in Waterbury will end up in this field out here. So they had some concerns about it moving. A couple of the people suggested to me that we have some open space in St. Albans, and maybe it should move into the city. That was just the feedback they gave me. But I don't know enough about it to really understand how secure they're going to make it. I agree with Brendan when they talked about no fence. The no fence thing seemed to be like a no-brainer for the neighborhood, and didn't see how that would mentally affect the kids that would be in that facility.
Right. In your campaigning, is there one dominant issue that you're running into as you campaign that you're obviously asking people there what they think about the town and what's going on, and any dominant issue that's on their minds?
Well, what I talk about a bit is when we replace our town manager, I'd like to see somebody come in that's like a chief financial officer experience, because we've got into big money. I mean, we're like a small public corporation right now with a lot of stockholders out there. And if you bring in someone that has experience in money management, I think that they could bring a lot to the town. I'd also like to see somebody that can write a lot of grants. There is a huge amount of federal money and state money that's available if we have somebody out there writing grants. I have some concerns about the method and way, or the person that's doing the job search right now. It just seems like we should go to an outside agency to find 5 good candidates for us, and then bring those candidates back to the board and let the board do the interviewing. And then I also believe that the new manager should hire their own staff instead of bringing in all kinds of staff now. Let the new manager build their own team. Those are the big things. The other thing that I was very successful for us in the Rotary and the Chamber of Commerce in Plattsburgh was developing a program for a technical education or trades training. Too many of our kids don't go to college, and when we dealt with it over in Plattsburgh, I asked the principals, why are you only teaching to the college kids? And they said, well, that's the only ones we get credit for. And so you're forgetting about half of our population out there. I took a tour of the tech center up here in St. Albans, and it's amazing. It's really, really good. I would just like to see more close work between the industries and the tech center to create jobs that when these kids, specific to the industry that's needed. As an example, when we were doing this, setting this up in Plattsburgh, Bombardier came in and they said, we need stainless steel welders. So they set up a stainless steel welding booth in the high school. Those kids graduating out of that program started at $75,000 a year with no college debt. If we could get Husky, if we could get, I forget what the name of the new company here that wants to come into town, Beta.
Beta Technologies.
Find out the exact job skills that those folks need and train specifically for those jobs. I think it'll make a good force here so that we can keep our kids staying working in this area instead of having to go to Burlington to get the big bucks.
Brendan, what are you hearing? Any dominant issues on the campaign
So
trail?
I want to circle back to hiring the town manager and the town's need for a CFO role.
Yeah.
But I will share that when Haddad Subaru, George and Sherry Haddad invested over $10 million in their new dealership down
Is that
the
right,
road.
over 10 mil?
They worked with Subaru of America to create a program that kids from our community are utilizing, where they go and they learn how to be Subaru techs, and there are jobs waiting for them. Tim Smith, the executive director of Franklin County Industrial Development,
And St. Albans Mayor?
St. Albans City Mayor. Yep. He says one of our biggest issues facing our manufacturers, and one of the biggest issues that will continue to come up as new manufacturers look to move into our community, is workforce, availability of bodies to fill roles. So to get more people in the community, we need more housing, and to do that, we needed water and sewer. So we made the deal on water and sewer. We're going to be able to build more housing after we modernize our bylaws, which should bring a larger workforce to the community. We already have businesses, private businesses, that are working directly with the tech center. Franklin County Industrial Development has a relationship with Leanne Wright, the director up at the tech center. They're doing a lot of that work together. It needs to be expanded. That's a discussion that I know is being had at the Maple Run district office. About the town manager, I view the select board and town manager relationship as we're the board of directors and that person's the CEO. Now, a good CEO in our position, in our government here, or our business, would be someone who can collaborate with area partners, forge relationships, bring people together. I'll share that when we were competing against Plattsburgh to land Beta Technologies in the old Energizer facility, Tate Brooks, a local person, former select board chair, and deputy secretary of the Agency for Commerce and Community Development, and then Tim Smith in his role as executive director of FCIDC reached out to the town and said, hey, we need a representative to attend a meeting with Beta Technologies tomorrow. They're considering St. Albans. We got looped in kind of late in the game because that's what happens. We're a very small town, relatively speaking, in a really small state. So I, as select board chair, I cleared my schedule for the next day. I spent the next 12 hours reading about Beta, what they're trying to do, what the battery manufacturing facility could need for St. Albans. And I went to that meeting and I offered to be a partner. You know, I said the town would be a partner. We will help you if you have any local issues that you need help with. And, you know, despite the fact that Plattsburgh and the state of New York were able to put together a $6 million package worth of grants and funds for Beta to locate their facility there, and the state of Vermont was only able to come up with $2 million, they decided to locate in St. Albans Town anyway. We learned a lot throughout that process, and I'll also share that we do need a CFO role as we continue to get federal and state grants. We bring them in every year. They're really hard to account for to the standard of which the grant issuer expects. VTrans, for example, when we built the new salt shed, it took us an extra year to build that salt shed than it did to build the new public works facility, because we had a grant tied specifically to the salt shed. It's very laborious. So the director of operations position that we have funded for an $80,000 salary plus benefits, we could see the next town manager decide that's their CEO role. But when we hire the next town manager,
Brendan, need to move on here.
we're going to be looking for somebody that's going to bring people to the table to collaborate to grow the town. I think a CFO would be better served as another person within the organization.
Jonathan, what are you hearing? Any, again, dominant issues on the campaign trail? Any particular issues? You run into a range of concerns, issues out there?
Pretty minor issues, you know, stuff that pretty much town manager controlled issues, you know, like plowing or somebody hit my mailbox, you know, just stuff like that. You get a lot of comments and support for the city and water agreement over the sewer.
David McWilliams, of course, has talked about spending too much on budget being too high. Do you run into concern? Do you run into that concern out there?
Well, you see some stuff on social media, but I think that's just, you know, I don't know what you call it, propaganda or whatever, just to get people to try to get you to fire back and try to get you to get in a verbal argument on social media. I don't play that game. Like, I don't get on social media and start doing that stuff.
Speaking of the town manager search, where can you give us, where do you stand with that? Are you getting close to?
Yes, we are. Yeah, we are. We got some interviews lined up this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again,
And I just want to clarify one thing. We went out to bid for the town manager search. We had 3 firms, an international firm, VLCT, 44/7 Strategies, and they gave us 3 different prices. We went with what we thought would give us their best value, and would we end up with 7 applicants, I believe? And there's some other municipalities that are close to us that are in the same search as we are and used another firm, a different firm, and they got 0 applicants. So I think we got our money's worth.
David, what are you hearing on the campaign trail about issues, concerns, whatever?
Well, when you want a good qualified, I say qualified manager, you're gonna have to pay the money to get that person to come here. You know, I think that we need somebody that has really been in the background as far as doing this type of work, because, you know, we don't need people that are administrative assistants that are coming from other towns. We also need to make sure that we don't hire all these consultants that we've had that are getting $40 and $50 an hour in the town of St. Albans. You know, I feel that we're gonna pay the money, let's get the right person. And don't go with any local person that, you know, is a friend of a friend on the select board.
St. Albans Town, of course, now has a former town hall. Of course, the old public works site on Lake Champlain. Any thoughts? I assume you'd like to see something happen with those kind of former sites. Any thoughts? Are you hearing anything about what the future could hold for those sites?
Well, I think those buildings are vacant right now. I think we could have made some money this winter by having them for storage of boats. I think in the spring, we ought to look at making a small boat launch for canoes or stuff like that, so people have better access to get to the water. You know, I think we need to clean up around there a lot more, but we can make money on that building until we decide what we're going to do with that property.
Jonathan, anything of substance coming down on the former town hall? I'm sure you have hope that something will happen to that building. Not much news?
We
No
had
real
a
news
couple informational meetings are open to the public, just like here, you know, get public's input. We had one lady that was interested in a daycare, putting a daycare in there, and that's a big need for the area, just not the town. And then far as the old DPW, we're gonna try to bargain to put a full boat launch in there. My argument with just a kayak and canoe launch is we have the entire Bay Park. Like, if you need to drop your canoe off at the gate and then go park and go get, like, so one thing you do see on social media come summertime is how plugged or full the boat launch is on Hathaway Point and the people parking down the road. Like, that's a huge, like, if we could turn that into like a 50-spot boat launch with maybe like a little community area off to the side or something.
Yeah. Have I heard dredging? Would you, if you made that an official, the former DPW site, a boat launch, a boat access area, would there need to be dredging there?
I've been on the water quite a bit of my life and been in that area, and yeah, it is fairly shallow until you get out to the old pier. There is a person in the bay that's going to be dredging this summer. Last time I talked to that person,
Really?
So it's not impossible. People think, oh, you can't dredge. It's not impossible.
Yeah. Brendan, again, former town hall, obviously, I'd like to think there'd be some future use of it.
So when I was select board chair, I reached out to local nonprofits like NCSS, Project SOAR, and others to ask them to evaluate their space needs, because I'd like to see the building put back in use in a way that serves the community. If it can't, it should be a daycare or housing in my mind, but we'll see what partners, come to the surface in the next 12 months or so, and we'll form a public-private partnership to get that building either back in use serving the public or back on the grand list, one or the other.
And what
So-
about the former DPW site?
We've reached out to Fish and Wildlife. They would support that because they understand how bad the Hathaway Point launch can be in the summer. I've got a close family member on West Shore Road, and I've driven through it, when it's single lane, single file, and you end up with a vehicle coming, and somebody's got to back up a quarter mile to get through. It's just not safe. There is dredging that needs to be done. There's a barge that needs to be pulled, but that's all possible. The biggest question we had with that property was whether or not there were environmental pollutants, and it seemed like folks had kind of kicked that can down the road the last 20-odd years out of fear of learning that there could be. But we did the right thing. We hired an environmental site assessment and consulting firm to put in monitoring wells. The state's guidelines are really strict in how you report and take account for any pollutants that might be there. We just went through a several-year process that just concluded a couple months ago. The monitoring wells have been pulled. We have the data we need. It's not that bad at all. A lot better than I was expecting, to be honest. And now we're in position to be able to redevelop that property. So,
David Bray, any thoughts on the former town hall and the former Department of Public Works garage site?
Well, the Public Works garage site would make, I think, a good alternative for the one that we have out on Hathaway Point, because as Brenda says, I travel down that road quite often, and there's just not enough room there for the cars to park. Unfortunately, I don't think there's enough area that we can expand in there without getting into the wetlands. So I'm not sure that one can get any bigger. The one in the bay certainly would offer some good things. Dredging is possible. You'd have to go through the Army Corps of Engineers and the shoreline protection people. It takes a little while to do that, but it's doable. So I'm in favor of seeing that. I love Lake Champlain. I'd like to see the bay turn blue instead of green in August and July. That's going to be a long-term process, but I think that if you take a coalition of all of the players involved in that, you can make some progress on cleaning up the bay. I have some ideas that I think could work to bring the farming community into this, that would not help them, not just put a burden around their neck. As far as the old town hall, if they could put it into early childhood education, I'd be all in favor of that. I was able to start in my previous career a childhood education facility over in New York State. We got 75 kids going through that. It gives every kid, regardless of income, an equal footing when they hit first grade. Super if we could get something like that in there. One of the concerns that I had
And
about...
again, down to about 10 minutes, so
Okay.
try to be very concise.
One of the concerns I have about where the new town hall was located, I voted for it to be there because I saw on it in the election ballot, it said, do you choose to have the town hall at the bay? It's always been there, made sense. I think the bay should be the hub of our community. But there was an option on the table, from what I understand, that the Smiths, Rachel and Sam Smith, had offered 5 acres to the town for free, where we would have had city water and sewer. They could have gone up there. Now, maybe that wasn't the correct option, but as far as visibility, nobody heard about that.
This would have been
Can I
land up
address that,
around
Richard?
exit 19,
Could
somewhere
I
around.
address that, Richard?
Yeah.
So the Smith
Quick-
family
quick-
offered to
quickly, we're down to
donate.
10
The
minutes.
Smith family offered in 2017, 2018 to donate 5 acres for free to the town in their field across from, directly across the street from where you would turn onto 104 from Upper Weldon. We would be bringing in municipal water, sewer, and natural gas services from Vermont Gas. We formed an infrastructure committee that had a lot of really smart people on it. They determined at that time that they wanted 10 acres, even if we had to buy an extra 5, and that they wanted a municipal complex that included public works and fire to go with the town hall. And throughout the process of trying to develop that proposal, the deal fell apart. It all happened very publicly. I remember some select board meetings that still keep me up at night sometimes when I remember the opportunity that fell through the cracks there, but we were able to pick up the pieces and I think we led a really good charge with the new town hall. There were 5 different questions that were asked across 3 different ballots that led to that building being constructed, and you know, it's a beautiful space and the employees are happy and we're ready to grow and move forward finally.
Okay. Jonathan, again, you're content with the new town hall, with the location? Was that the way to go?
Yeah, I mean, I was on the design team in the early stages, and just my concern was the parking. So if when we end up redeveloping the old DPW site, hopefully we can have overflow parking. Like, that was one of my biggest issues down there.
Yeah. David, I think you were critical of the time it took to get into the new town hall, I believe. The water issue surfaced, but was that the place that it should have been located? Are you happy with the location of it?
Well, first of all, you know, when they hit the salt in the well, you know, they probably should have gone down farther on the town property, which they had the option of buying, and if they hit salt water again, then they should have gone back to the voters and said, look, you know, we need to relocate this. You wanted to keep it in the village, but we've got to put it somewhere else. Putting it there, you know, they got a 4,000 gallon water tank outside that has to be pumped out every 2 weeks and brought up to the city wastewater plant. The roof, in my opinion, should have been all peak roof and not a flat roof on some of it. You know, there's more rooms and offices in there than I've ever seen in any place, including City Hall. So, you know, of course, if we keep on hiring all these employees, you know, we're going to need more room for them. But it's a beautiful building, but in my opinion, they should have not gone there.
Interesting. Let me start with a select board. I just noticed reading the town report yesterday, Bob Cross in his last year. That was new news to me. So that'll be another important position. Is again Public Safety Director, Fire Chief Harold Bob Cross. So this is his last year. Again, that was recent news to me, Jonathan.
Yeah, I heard it unofficially. He didn't. You know,
He notes that in his
Yeah,
report, in the
I
town
haven't read
report, that
that
it'll
yet,
be his
but
last report. But
it-
that'll be certainly, again, is he here for the rest of the calendar year? Do you know his situation?
I believe, yeah, he'll be here for the rest of the calendar.
But that'll be an important position. And he thought, again, he was, of course, the first full-time firefighter hired by the town. Georgia has that issue on its ballot this time around. Is one full-timer enough at this point? Any thoughts that the town
Well,
may be needing a second full-timer?
We will get there at some point. I think right now we have Bobby plus a part-time staff in there. We'll end up needing 2 full-time. But then there's also talk of, you know, expanding the fire department a little bit. Whether or not that means combining resources with the city, you know, that's to be determined. But we have 2 fire departments within a few miles of each other, you know, with the same equipment. So how can we work together again, possibly on another deal?
And there's been occasional talk about maybe a satellite station on the north end of town. Has that come up at all, or not much these days?
It has and it hasn't. I think just talking with the chief, I think he'd rather kind of get a couple departments together.
Yeah. David, again, second, can you see a need down the road, maybe not too far, of a second full-time firefighter?
Well, the town is growing so fast, you know, and we're going to need at least 2 to 3 full-time, because volunteers now are hard to find to be be a fireman in the town of St. Albans or the city of St. Albans. So I think, you know, in the long run, we're going to need more full-time officers. I can remember when the city and the town were supposed to merge their departments. They laid off everybody in the city, and they wanted the town to take over, and basically I went against it, filed grievances for the union people.
I think it was the last
And
time
won
the
the case.
city budget was defeated, in fact, hooked into that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But, you know, we're going to need a new fire department, you know, and we got an outstanding force, you know, that has been with us for a long time. And the city and town work good if there's ever a call in the city or town.
Getting real tight on time. Again, second full-time firefighter, Brendan, not too far away, very
For
quickly.
the last few years, I've been calling attention to the fire department as our next big capital project and as our next big obligation to fund in the next 10 years. I think we're going to need more than 2 full-time folks, but I think with the water and sewer agreement in place now, it takes a lot of animosity off the table between the city and town, and those discussions about sharing resources and maybe even only ever having one department like we will with the St. Albans Police Department. Maybe we'll see something like that, but again, like you said, Chief Cross retiring at the end of the year, has had a 48 career, 8-year career with the town. I know that when he retires, he won't be gone, so we'll be able to leverage his knowledge, and I'm sure he'll be helping whatever design team or subcommittee is meeting to help develop the new fire station, whatever that looks like, and you know, we wish him well in his retirement.
David Bray, again, inevitable, town fire department's gonna have to get bigger.
I did talk to Bob Cross, and he did confirm that he is retiring. What concern that Bob expressed to me was the locations of where the fire stations should be, with the railroad tracks running through the middle. If there's a fire on the east side of the town and there's a train going through, that creates a problem. So if we do look to 2 stations, and maybe again, I think that would be another area where we could work with the city to maximize the use of our equipment, not duplicate it, and maybe the city can do the fire department on the other side of town.
Just about out of time. I'll give you 30, 45 seconds. Make your case as succinctly as you can, David Bray.
I would like to see more transparency in the town government, because it's tough for working families to actually have the time to figure out what's going on. I think there's a way that we could do it by just emailing out to everybody. Everybody in town has an email address. Once a month, send out a little email newsletter from each department saying this is what we're facing, this is what we're coming up with, or these are meetings that are coming up you might want to attend. Again, I go back to the town manager, the new town manager. I really strongly think that person should have some financial background in how to administer money, because we're dealing with big bucks now.
Okay, Brendan, 45 seconds or so.
I will share that the new town hall physically is complete. We're in it. The new virtual town hall is still under construction. We have some online zoning forms that are new. We're taking online payments now, and we're going to be in the process at some point in the next 2 years of digitizing land records and assessing records. We're going to have to get on the newsletter train. We are collecting emails now through a software that we helped develop. It's a municipal CRM, which really, quite frankly, didn't exist before we helped develop this new one. I'll share that if you'd have told me 6 years ago we'd accomplish everything we'd accomplished in the last 6 years, I wouldn't have believed you. And it's because of the team we have in place, and I want to keep working with them for the next 2 years to get more done for our community.
Very good. Jonathan Giroux, you'd like some more time on the select board?
Yeah, I appreciate all the support from everybody that I've had over the years and doing this, and I'm looking forward for another 3 years on the board.
Dave McWilliams, give you about the last word here.
Well, you know, if you want to vote for these 2 gentlemen because they raised the budget, go ahead. I'm going to be a conservative person, try to control the budget and the wasteful spending that's going on in our town. Thank you for voting for me if you do.
Okay, we've got to kill about a minute here. Hopefully I can do that. But again, Vermont Town Meeting Day, not far away. I should note, voting, of course, in St. Albans Town, I should note that, and I'm not aware a lot of other towns are doing this, but folks are getting, all registered voters in the town are getting, or should have gotten their ballots in the mail.
Yeah.
So that should definitely give you.
I got mine
better
yesterday.
turnout. Got yours yesterday.
Yeah. So.
And again, town reports are out. I got my town report yesterday. They're just out. So hopefully folks will pay attention. I should note there is a public informational meeting. Is that the day before town meeting,
Day before.
Brendan?
27th.
Oh, am I way off on the
It
time?
could be the
Actually,
6th.
is it probably in here?
The 27th, I think.
I mean, anyway, but check that. There's a public informational meeting coming
We
up
want to
on
give
here.
thanks to Anna Borden and her assistant Lisa Rock for helping us with vote by mail. It's one of the only good things to come out of the COVID pandemic, and it's a lot of hard work. I worked with them for the majority of at the end of last week to stuff ballots, and it was a good insight to all the hard work they did, and we appreciate it.
Okay, again, thanks to, again, incumbent board member Brendan Deso being challenged by David Bray for a 2-year term. Jonathan Giroux, the board chair, being challenged by David McWilliams for a 3-year term. Good luck. Thanks for coming on. Thanks to Paul Snyder for doing all the hard work back there. I'm Richard Cowperthwait. We'll see you next time on Northwest Access TV. See ya.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
You guys are clear.
Thanks. Thanks, folks.